A little prairie dog. There's a little prairie dog. Hello, little prairie dogs. The only time I used to ever see you on the East Coast is at the Smithsonian Zoo. How do you make it out here with all the hawks? Between you and the rabbits, I guess the hawks have so much to eat that they can't eat all of you. I see a rabbit over, I think, well, maybe it's another prairie dog over there. Another one of your cousins, yeah, there's another one over there. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? That's pretty cool. I don't get to see a woodchuck, a prairie dog every day. Your cousins are very popular at the Smithsonian Zoo. Their behavior is really like the muskrats. Except for they don't live in the, except for they're not in the mud, and they're not eating marsh grass. They're eating prairie grass. All right. I bet there's quite a few more of you around here. It's always fun to see a new critter. I saw some elk yesterday. Well, there could have been a moose. I think they were elk though. I think they were. If they were moose, they were young. They were probably young elk or young moose, but I'm pretty sure they were elk. A lot of rattlesnakes out here. I haven't seen any yet, but when I was out here one time before, I saw a lot of rattlesnakes. A little different kind of rattlesnake than what we have in eastern North Carolina for the most part. There might be some of the same types, but there's quite a few different species of rattlesnake. Cool. So the Rocky Mountains, it's obviously a very prominent mountain range, but the actual distance from when you really go into the Rockies and to the other side where you leave the Rockies is not really that huge of an area in terms of miles straight across. Now, as they run from north to south, that's a long distance because there's several ranges that run right along the same fault line, basically, as so you have the American Rockies and the Canadian Rockies, and Colorado kind of being the epicenter of the Rockies, and there's a couple of ranges. But this right in front of us is essentially like we're on the east side of the Rockies, and just over those ridges are if you're on top of that little mound there, you might possibly even start to see the lots of trails out here, running and biking trails. In this area, a lot of them are paved for the bikers, which would be a great hobby to have if you lived out here. You could go for miles and miles and miles on your bicycle without really having to worry about traffic or anything. If you could, in the right spot, you can see over the ridge there, and you can see the peaks of what's called the Front Range. And this is sort of just the foothills of that, I guess you could say. There's several peaks in Colorado that reach above 14,000 feet, but none that reach up to 15,000 feet. There's Mount Whitney in California, which is not part of the Rockies. It's, I guess, part of the Sierra Nevada, probably. That's, I think, it's the tallest mountain in the continental United States, and I think it's 15,000 and something. I don't think it's 16. And then Alaska, and they've got 3 major ranges in Alaska. They have the Chugach Range, which is looks a lot like the Rockies in terms of the way that it's very jagged and a lot of steep elevation, but it's not total altitude of the Chugach Range is not that high, but they rise right up out of the ocean, basically right along the edge of Alaska. And then there's the Alaskan Range, which is where the 20,000, where Mount McKinley or called Denali, whichever, is the tallest mountain in North America. And there's several other major peaks in Alaska right around Mount McKinley, but the mountain range looks completely different. It's like a huge uplifting of Earth with like several peaks coming down off of it. It just looks different. It's very impressive. And then there's the Brooks Range, and then the Canadian Rockies has some 18,000 foot peaks or something close to that. And then Mexico has some major peaks. And then, of course, the Andes Mountains in South America have, I don't know what the highest mountain in South America is, but it might be 20,000 feet. I don't know. It might be over that. But I don't know. I kind of think McKinley's I think it's the highest mountain, maybe both in North and South America, but the Andes certainly has some mountains that are about as high as McKinley or higher. What was interesting, though, is the Appalachian Mountains are estimated to have been more like the height of the Alaska Range Mountains at their peak. That's how much they've eroded. Now, the highest peak in the Appalachians, Mount Mitchell, so it's like 6,600 feet roughly, or something like 6,600 feet above sea level, which isn't even close to the top altitude of any of these mountains in the Rockies or the Alaskan Range or the Canadian Rockies or the Andes. But they're so old, they've eroded so much that at one time they were amongst the tallest mountains in the world, kind of more almost comparable to like the Himalayan mountains. And the Himalayan mountains, which is the tallest mountain range where Mount Everest and K2 and all those mountains are, that's actually the active mountain building area. So those mountain peaks in the Himalayas are still actually slowly rising because the Indian continental plate is pushing into the Asian plate. So it's just actually an active mountain building range. So even though the Rockies are such an impressive mountain range, which is an eroding mountain range too. It's a younger mountain range than the Appalachians, obviously, but it's not the Rockies are not at their peak either. But it's really interesting to think about that. To think about the Appalachian Mountains being such a long mountain range too, running all the way from Georgia all the way up into New England. And actually, I think if I remember correctly, the mountain range, the Caledonian Mountains or New Caledonia, no, I can't remember what. I think the mountain range in Australia is called New Caledonians, and the mountain range in Norway is called the Caledonians. But either way, the mountain range through Norway is actually part of that same chain of mountains. So long ago that the continents were together at that point, and that's how old the Appalachian Mountains are. That they were actually are part of the same range of mountains, or built with Norway, I believe. I think that is correct. So, well, just out here enjoying the almost what you would call prairie. This is kind of like a prairie, even though we're sort of on the foothills of the Rockies. I love you.